Hey, so today I wanted to lead y'all through creating a secondary base, a scan hub in Subnautica. So we're gonna currently I'm scouting a new location. I've got a couple of bases around in the other direction. One is 500 meters away here now. The other one is down a little bit, but that's about 1,500 meters out. And then another one is even further. We've got a couple of them well underground in Lost River, so on and so forth. But I wanted to put a second one here on the surface, and in doing so, I wanted to show you what I've decided to do on the general construction of these secondary scanning hubs. So that's what we're creating right now, is a secondary scanning hub. While we're doing this, I wanted to mention a couple of concepts in where you should place your scan hub. So with a little bit of scouting, I have been able to find a location that matches my ideal location for a scan hub. First off, we want it to be at least 1,000 meters away from any other hub that we have. So if you look here, you'll see I've got one down in the deep Grand Reef that's 2,000 meters out. My main one here, where I've got everything, is about 1,300 meters out. So you put all of that together, and I've got a couple in the Lost River, but those are down well below surface. Each of these are over 1,000 meters away. So that means that this hub is serving a completely distinct area. Then beyond that, of course, I want it bordering at least 2 biomes. So here we're looking at the mushroom forest. Over here we're looking at the bulb zone. And if we go just a little bit further in the other direction, we'll find the kelp forest right there. So somewhere here in this area would be an ideal location that gives me access to 3 distinct biomes, and thus distinct minerals and resources as well. Then, lastly, we need to look for a good overhang for the moon pool. The moon pool doesn't have a ton of clearance normally between itself and the bottom of the ocean there, wherever your surface might be. And that being the case, it's nice to be able to have a good place that has a decent overhang so that I could put, say, the multi-purpose room right here as high as I can off of the ledge, and then the moon pool then will hang over the ledge, and that'll make it really, really easy just to fly right on in there. So those are the ideals for location. I'm going to go ahead and start building here, and we'll talk about the building process as we go through each room. As we begin to build here, we are, of course, starting with a few of the exterior pieces, in particular the multi-purpose room. I always start my build with the multi-purpose room. The reason why is because the moon pool won't allow me to build so high usually. It usually doesn't let me build up here. So that means in order to get that built, I have to go down far too low. What I really like to do is to put that moon pool off of the ledge. So I'll put the multi-purpose room on the ledge somewhere, as high as I can get it really, just to get a connection point for the moon pool so that the moon pool doesn't care that it's so high off the ground, but rather it's connected to something that is on the ground. And of course, we also want to double check the orientation of the moon pool. Since we cannot spin the moon pool like we can other rooms, you want to make sure that the end of it attaches to the multi-purpose room. There's a reason why I want it to be the end, and I'll show you that in just one second. It has to do with ladder location. So with that, it looks like we've got it lengthwise here. So it's going to go lengthwise off of, there we go, our multi-purpose room. And even though there's a gap there, it should connect, boom, just like that. And you see now, minus 5.2 base hull strength, we're now at 3.5, and I'm only at 100 and some meters. If you're going anywhere below this at 500 meters, 800, 1,000, I've got one base down at 1,200 meters below surface, you definitely need reinforcement. So I usually reinforce one of the moon pools, and if you are anything below about 500 or 600, especially once you're down towards like 1,000 below, you definitely need reinforcement, probably 2 pieces of reinforcement. So I've included that in the materials list. I'll give you a list of all the materials required in just 1 second after we finish this build. So we've got our reinforcement here. Like I said, you probably need 2 if you're going all that deep. But nonetheless, we've got our first reinforcement, we've got our multi-purpose room, we've got our moon pool. The scanner room is going to come up in just a second, but as you can see, we need oxygen, which means we need to care about power. Now, I'm so close to the surface that the ideal for me is going to be to use solar power. And since we're going to use this for scanning purposes, I want 2 separate solar power stations rather than just 1. And I see a place here that's going to be really near to surface. So I want to double check and see if I can't get a transmitter that is going to allow me to go all the way up, get the power straight from the surface down to there. If you've never used a power transmitter before, all they do is collect power from a power source and send that power down through the transmitter to approximately about 100 meters, either to another transmitter so you can chain them, or straight to the actual building itself that you've got. So I'm just going to look for a place to hang this solar panel, and we're going to lay a transmitter or 2 to get power down to that guy. All right, we've got some perfectly awkwardly placed solar panels. I prefer 2 of them just because with the scanner room that sucks up so much energy, I want to make sure that there's plenty of energy available for that room. 2 seems to be the magic number to at least make it work for the most part. Transmitter now does require some gold, so I gotta go grab that for my ship, and we will chain it down here. It looks like about 200 meters is how far we have to chain that power to in order to get the surface sun. Obviously, we're only 100 meters down, so we could probably have put those solar panels on the actual level of this particular base, but it would have been at a severely reduced efficiency. So who knows? Could have worked, but this will only cost a little bit of gold and will easily make happen what I want to happen. So for these power transmitters, the first one has to be placed fairly close to the actual power sources in order for it to collect the power from that source. So you'll see the blue beams as we place them. There you go, and you can see both of those blue beams coming off of the solar power, and that is going to determine just how far away, there we go, we can place them. So right now we've only got 1, we lose both. There's the first, there's the second. So that first one has to be at least that close in order to receive signal. Ta-da! Alright, so the first one's got its signal, and let's build our second and see how far this will allow us to go. Nope. Just lost it. And if it's close enough, it will automatically connect. Apparently it is not, so we need just 1 more. And there you go. It connects from there and bounces straight to the actual building itself. You do not need another power transmitter on the buildings. So that gets us power and oxygen. There's no need for an oxygen pump anymore, as without one, our oxygen fills up. So now the question is, as I said before, when we're adding the scanning room, we want to see in which direction we dismount out of the Seamoth. So we hop up and dismount to the side that has the reinforcement. So we want the scan room over here then, to make it nice and easy for us to get out, go to the scan room and do our thing, and come back. When you place your scanner room, this is one of the few rooms that we can actually, kind of like our, tubes themselves, you can rotate it. And usually it will not be rotated in the appropriate direction. So just make sure that that tube is connecting the scan room to the actual building itself that you want it connected to. In this case, we want it connected to the moon pool, and we want it connected to the part of the moon pool that is closest to the multi-purpose room that will keep us moving as little as possible. So we'll get this guy created. Now then, if you look at our hull strength, we are up to 9.5. This means if we removed our reinforcement here, it would drop to 2.5. So again, on these higher elevations, it's not actually necessary, higher depths, lower. When you're closer to the surface, it's not actually necessary for even one reinforcement maybe. But as you get closer and closer to the bottom, yes, it is, absolutely. Now, a personal preference of mine is also that we put a hatch on each of these. One hatch goes here for me. It goes on the end of the scanner room so that you can hit scan for something and then dive out and just grab something quick like. Or the other one is I always put it on the opposite side from the moon pool itself. So put another hatch out here. Now, again, both of these hatches are not necessary in the slightest. You can always enter and exit from the moon pool alone if you really want. That would save you 4 titanium and 2 quartz, because the quartz is necessary for these hatches, you know? But I prefer that. I like having the multiple entrances and exits. And then we fill out the inside. Personally, when we're placing the interior components, I prefer to start here in the moon pool. I want everything as centralized right here in this little corner as I can possibly get. So that means that we put the fabricator in here. And then also at least one wall locker. Or, well, not necessarily a wall locker. I prefer the regular lockers, but that depends on how much quartz you have available to you, of course. But we've got our fabricator, we've got our locker. The reason why we have this guy, the multi-purpose room, is because water filtration is a massive beast. So we set up water filtration in here. And along with that, we also are going to want an interior grow bed. So let's get a grow bed going. No, not an exterior, an interior. And hopefully you brought some fruit or whatever kind of food it is that you intend to grow. Unfortunately, on this particular trip, I forgot to, so I would have to take another trip back to base to collect some. But with that, we are basically done here. We have a moon pool. We've got our multi-purpose room. You can put whatever else you want in here, but that's really the purpose of the moon pool, is to allow for space for the water filtration. The other possibility is that right here in the middle, you might want to put a bioreactor. It's just a different kind of power, but the kind of power you use makes a difference. Thermal is far and away the best power in the game. It has no recharge requirements. It works both day and night, so that beats solar. With bio requires maintenance. You have to grow stuff and continue to feed the reactor, which means when you're gone for a while, you come back and you have 0 power. So now you have to wait for it to actually recharge. Whereas thermal continues throughout regardless. So if you can build near a thermal vent and take advantage of thermal power, you want to. In this case, I could not. I did a good, thorough scout of the area, and I did not find any thermal here in either of these 3 zones within about 200 or 300 meters of me. The best I could get was that particular use of solar power, and that's why I put that solar power also as close to the surface as possible, and then use the transmitters. Those transmitters allow you to find the perfect little area within that particular zone that you want to be in. Beyond that, of course, there's nuclear. Nuclear is something that you don't get an opportunity to use until much later in the game, and even then, it's just really expensive using the uranite, and each rod costs a lot to create, and by the time you have to deal with all of that, you might as well just go with bio and make it a short-term thing, or if you can, just set up thermal. So that's what you could put over here as well. And then, of course, you can, if you really wanted to, you could put all of those modules in here. So the last 2 things that I want to put in here, one is somewhat frivolous. It is my trash can. I always place one of these next to the water filtration unit because of how the water filtration always produces the extra salt. I usually don't use the salt. I keep maybe 2 cured fish on me at any given point in time. And half the time those are even kept actually in the sea moth or in the back of the prawn. So most of the salt I just throw away and dispose of immediately. So that's why I like to do that. The other one that I want to put in here before we take leave is the battery charger. In more advanced bases, I put not just a battery charger. Looks like I need a wiring kit. Where's my wiring kit? But I also put a power cell charger in here as well. And the reason why I do that is because I always carry an extra battery or 2, not a ton of them, but just 1 or 2 extras. And this allows me to use that extra battery all on its own. But beyond that, it also lets me charge the ones that need charging, allowing this hub to fully service my needs, period. Then, of course, the power cells themselves charge as we leave the vehicle docked. So, this is the base. We've got our scan room, which allows us to jump through the hatch once we have things chosen, or return back, hop in the vehicle, and go find that mineral. We've got our fabricator to make stuff. We've got a locker, or 2 or 3, however many you choose, to store stuff. We've got a place to charge any of our batteries that might need charging. And we've got water and food. Of course, if you have that bioreactor, then you also have that to work with as well. And plenty of space to drop any other modules that you might need, whether it's a modification station or what have you. You may also be wondering about the material costs for all of this. So here's what we just built. The moon pool, a multi-purpose room. We put in 2 solar power units and a scan room. We put in fabricator and a locker. Put in water, trash, a grow bed, and 1 reinforcement. We also put in 2 hatches and a battery charger. So these are all the things that we put into that scan hub, and you can see the material requirements right there. So we've got 38 titanium, 37 titanium, 2 titanium ingots, a couple of copper ore, a couple copper wire, a couple table coral, etc., etc. So there's your list. Total slots required, that's inventory slots, are either 66 if you're going with the dual solar power, or 62 if you're going with the thermal power. Even so, thermal power, you can get by with 1 if that's a really good one, like 65 or 70 degrees, but personally I like to go with 2 thermal. Of course, 1 to start with, and then if you have the extra like aerogel and all that kind of stuff, then 2 would be the ideal. But nonetheless, this means you need a minimum of either 62. Anything in parentheses there is following the thermal power route. So you need either 62 slots or 66 slots. Mind you as well, if you're not sure that 1 power transmitter is going to do it, like I needed 2 for that particular hub. So something you did not see was I was scrambling a little bit to grab some more gold. I had brought enough titanium, but the transmitter requires 1 gold and 1 titanium. So you might want to bring a little bit of extra gold for something along those lines as well. But the reason why I wanted to point out the total inventory slots required is because you are likely going to need the storage upgrades for your Seamoth or for your prawn, if that's the case, so that you can carry as much stuff as is required in order to build up that initial very first scan hub base there. Don't forget too that one of the first things that you should build at that new fabricator is a beacon. And you want to drop that beacon right below your base so that it's easy to identify. And you probably want to go into your PDA and change the color of your bases so that they stand out by compared to other PDA notifications, signal notifications. Now, this is the basic layout of most of my scan hubs. If you are not interested in seeing any spoilers, then right here is where you want to end this video. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you found it helpful and enjoyed it. Hit like below if you liked, subscribe if you want to see more of this kind of stuff. Otherwise, the last couple of minutes of this video are going to be touring 2 facilities that I have already built. So we're going to dive a little bit deeper, and we're going to take a look at the 2, one that was temporarily useful, which I've already torn down a fair bit of, and another one which I have made awesome use of, and I am always going to build a base there in the future because it was that excellent. So that one I've developed a little bit further. So stick with me and we'll show you 2 bases that are a little bit more developed than this brand new one that we just created. All right, we are coming up on one of my satellite bases. This is in the Deep Grand Reef. As you can see, I am using a power transmitter over here to send power to it from, I used to have 2 thermal plants, but I only have 1 here now. And so that's sitting right on top of this thing. It is a blazing hot, how much is that thing? 73 degrees. 73 degrees Celsius there. So that's sending a ton of power over here. I used to have that hatch on this side, and of course the scan room off of this side with another hatch. And that also meant I had the reinforcement there. I took all of that off because I'm basically done with this area. There are no resources that are of importance to me here. There's nothing in particular that I need to explore. I'm just done with this area. So because of that, this is a very sparse place. I believe I left, yes, I did leave the fabricator up, and I do have a locker here, but this locker is now empty because I'm not intending on using it. It's just here to service the fabricator, which I may or may not use. Beyond that, this is what I leave at all stations. So I can just come on in here, grab my water, and know that anytime I stop, there's going to be power to recharge my Seamoth. There's going to be water to drink and food to eat. That way, it's just a pit stop. You know, consider this your typical truck stop along the way as you're traveling through the deep ocean. So this is all that I left up. And as you can see then, if there's no hatch here and there's no hatch here, the only way in or out is via the moon pool. And that was why we oriented it as we did. Because now if I'm out swimming for whatever purpose, then I can just come back to the ladder and ta-da, I have a wide open run straight into the multi-purpose room. So that's why I always build them in this way, where lengthwise the moon pool lines up with the multi-purpose room. Now then, let's go ahead and hop back into this guy. And the other base that I wanted to show y'all is down in the Lost River. So I've got a little bit of running to do and dodging of leviathans, and I will see you in the Lost River. All right, we are pulling in now to my Lost River home. So coming down the Lost River here, this particular location is just outside of, where is it? It's just outside of that tree. There it is. That beautiful, beautiful tree. Which also means it's just above the inactive lava zone, and just below the majority of the actual river itself. This island that I've chosen to settle on here has some thermal vents here, some thermal vents there, some thermal vents there and there. So there's tons and tons of opportunities for use of thermal power, which is a huge bonus. And with that, as you can see, as we're looking down here, we've got our scan room, our moon pool, and our multi-purpose room. Now, this was actually only the second base that I ever built. I had my main one up top on the surface, and then I built this one. So that's why it's not quite as standard, where the multi-purpose room would be off of the edge here. However, as you can see, I do have the moon pool hanging out a little bit to make it easier to fly into. I also wanted to make sure that it allowed for the prawn suit to drop onto land, rather than having it drop into the acid below. Even though the acid doesn't hurt it, I just didn't want to have to, jump that far in order to get in there, and I wanted to make sure that it, landed on land. So it actually does just barely. The prawn suit lands right here, right on this little outlet. So it was perfect placement. Nonetheless, this is a little bit more developed than the other scan hub. You can see I do still have my reinforcement on here. I believe that is the only reinforcement that I needed. I did put a window in there as well. I do have my two hatches, one off of the multi-purpose and one off of the scan room. And along with that, I also have my observatory. I just built the observatory. I like these things, put a bed in there, and that's just because I settled in here pretty good. This was an awesome place to use the prawn suit, to go mining. So I settled in pretty good, and I wanted to actually settle in. In doing so, I also put in grow beds so that I could have my creep vine here if I wanted it for fabrication purposes. Also, gel sacks are used for aerogel, so I collected a couple of those, and they're readily available here in the area, as are rubies and whatnot. So because of that, I also put an external grow bed just for gel sacks. On the inside, then, we have... Oh, looks like I've got a couple of reinforcement here on the inside as well. I've got my two power cell chargers. I put two in this base because this was my primary stop off for the Cyclops. And again, it's just an opportunity to charge power cells. I've got my battery charger. I did put a med kit down here just because you need med kits. So in primary bases, I do put med kits. I've got a fabricator. I did empty out both of these lockers, but that's because this particular save is actually done with the game altogether. Whereas this one had, just materials that I've collected here in the area. Beyond that, looking in the main room here, as you can see, as we mentioned before, we've got a grow bed and a water filtration. And that's about all that we actually have here in the area. Because that's all you really need in any given location. And then, of course, we've got the scan room itself. Every scan room, I did not mention this before, but every scan room should have two upgrades. They should have the room range upgrade and the room speed upgrade, in my opinion. If you're going to have multiples of these, then you probably want multiples of the range, or just playing two of each of them. You could do extra cameras. I don't know what benefit that does. But if you're using scan rooms, you also absolutely must have the scanner room HUD chip. That is an amazing boon. That is what makes these things worthwhile. So that is what a typical secondary hub looks like for me. I hope you find that helpful. Again, thanks for watching, and if you like this video, please hit like below, subscribe, and hopefully we will have some more content to keep us engaged and enjoying Subnautica and various other games as well. Have a great day.